Okay, guys, so we're looking at scene 9 now, which in many ways, although perhaps not the most climactic in terms of its action, it is the most climactic, I think, in terms of um, Blanche's fate. And I think from this moment on, everything derails in terms of Blanche's outcomes. The scene takes place in Stanley's house and largely involves a dialogue between Blanche and Mitch. And that's, if we understand in the backdrop of this, Mitch as Blanche's final hope, and this scene representing the loss of that hope, we see the way in which this scene functions, I think, is the beginning of Blanche's downward trajectory in the play. The opening stage directions showed Blanche seated in a tense hunch position in a bedroom chair that's been recovered with diagonal green and white stripes. I think the decorative covering on the chair, I think, is connected to a psychological desire to mask violence and to mask the harsh reality of existence. And you see that in the prop choice from Williams here. She has on her scarlet satin robe. On the table beside her chair is a bottle of liquor and a glass. So there's this, the constant motif of drinking in this play is really a fever pitch in this particular scene, as it reveals to us this escape from impending trauma and the same sorts of impulses that motivate her evasive treatment of reality. The rapid, feverish polka tune of Varsuviana is heard, so again, the music itself is offering a kind of choral function in terms of its commentary on the psychological state of the character. But it explicitly articulates this. The music is in her mind. She's drinking to escape it in the sense of disaster closing in on her. So we are, again, through Williams's plastic theatre, being dragged into the subjective content of the characters. And so that we are then being presented with a subjectively expressive scene setting and music. So he here explains the figurative component of his expressionism, his theatrical expressionism. So it's interesting that he actually intervenes here, almost in a meta-theatrical way, and comments on the expressive function of his stagecraft. She seems to whisper the words of the song. Electric fan is turning back and forth across her. So I think this is, again, she always talks about after bathing how she feels cool and reborn, but here we're clearly in the opposite situation where she feels like a kind of big, sweaty, numbering mess. Mitch comes around the corner in work clothes. Again, his clothes signify his socioeconomic status and the conflict between the characters. The blue denim shirt and pants, he's unshaven. There's a suggestion, I think, here that he has also been kind of derailed by the experiences with Blanche. He's been lost by this. He climbs the steps to the door and rings. And Blanche is startled, I think, because she's already lost hope. The polka tune stops, I think, at this moment in time because she hears it's Mitch, and there is this suggestion, I think, of the possibility of optimism. When she finds out it's Mitch here, she rushes back, frantically hiding the bottle in a closet, crouching at the mirror and dabbing her face with cologne and powder. She is so excited that her breath is audible as she dashes about. At last, she rushes to the door of the kitchen and lets him in. So this sudden transformation shows us the performance of her identity. That she's at this moment in time, I think, able to make this kind of rapid, sudden transformation between her previous situation and what we see now. And we have this sort of audience empathy with her and a construction of dramatic irony between her and Mitch. But of course, the great tragedy of this is that this is the scene where that dramatic irony doesn't hold for very long, because Mitch does actually understand the truth about her character. At the end of this, there's a sense of this sort of desperation. It's so utterly uncavalier, but hello, beautiful. Her sort of desperation here overcomes her sort of false use of chivalry. She sort of uses this vocabulary, being so utterly uncavalier, but then just cannot bear to lose this opportunity to speak to him and connect with him again. She offers him her lips, and again, there's this sense of brutal rejection. She opens herself out to him. She offers him her lips, and then he ignores it and pushes past her into the flat. And again, this physical penetration of the scene, I think, obviously connects to the attempted rape that he makes on her at the end of the scene itself, and he stalks into the bedroom. So here his behaviour, if you look at his stage movements, are becoming much more like Stanley, and that's one of the key features of the scene, is that Mitch's supposed natural gentlemanly quality is exposed, I think, to a certain extent, by his behaviour here. He is seen in the same light that men like Steve and Stanley are seen throughout the play, and particularly Stanley. In these lines where Blanche reflects on this, she reveals, I think, the content of her mind, and actually, he is revealing a moment of authenticity, but again, the language is sort of falsely superior in these lines. So there is a real feeling that's being channeled here. She has this, this hostility to him at the beginning of uncouth apparel, and you haven't shaved, the unforgivable insult, but I forgive you. She says it's unforgivable, but I forgive you, and I think that shows her desperation at that moment in time here. I forgive you because it's such a relief to see you. She doesn't forgive him because of her supposed moral absolutism. She forgives him because of her desperation and loneliness. You've stopped that polka tune that I had caught in my head. So again, there's this, this emptying actually of the expressive contents of Williams' stagecraft explicitly in the language here. Have you ever heard anything caught in your head? Some words, a piece of music that goes relentlessly on and on in your head. And of course, you don't, you dumb angel, because you never get anything awful caught in your head. So she manages to display her uncertainty here, and then manages to twist that uncertainty into a sense of bizarre kind of superiority of sensibility and sentiment that, again, sets her up for hostility with other characters. He stares at her while she follows him while she talks. It's obvious that he's had a few drinks on the way, so this, again, she's wandering around speaking to him, and he's staring at her while she follows him, and I think this sort of anticipates Stanley's sexual violence, but also her dependence on him, that she's the one that's following him and traipsing around after him. This dialogue here, I think, mirrors the control enviousness that we see here. Do we have to have that fan on? No, I don't like fans. Let's turn it off, honey. I'm not partial to them. So again, there's this sort of, I think, the control of the environment is what I was reading there. The controlling of the environment around her, I think, shows us this moment of attempted mastery in this scene that is obviously undone. She clears her throat uneasily, as Mitch plumps himself down on the bed in the bedroom and lights a cigarette. So here at this moment in time, I think there's this sort of confident display of kind of casual attitude that shows that he's given up, I think, attempting to meet her false expectations and her false chivalry, because obviously he now knows about her past and sees that there's no reason to be kind of beholden to these pretenses, or have these pretenses of chivalry and mannerisms enforced upon him. I don't want Stan's liquor. So he has this suggestion here of being domineering. It isn't Stan's, everything here isn't Stan's. So we have, again, when Stanley's not even here, he's asserting his physical presence. And I think shows that Mitch is afraid of his domination. She asks about his mother. How is your mother? Isn't your mother well? Mitch just says, why? So I think there's this sense of distance developing between the two of them, and his attempted kind of hardening here. His attempted hardening in resistance to her. And in these lines here, Blanche says, something's the matter tonight, but never mind, I won't cross-examine the witness. She touched her forehead vaguely, the polka tune starts up again. She can't really contain the conflict, which is why the theatrical aesthetic emerges into the play because of her insanity. This expressive plastic theatre is offering a running commentary on the state of her mental well-being and its eventual degeneration. So here, touching her forehead almost suggests that the movement itself is communicating the contents of her mind to the characters. Pretend I don't notice anything different about you. That music again. Well, Suviana and the polka tune they were playing when Alan Wait, and there's this moment here of the past resurfacing. And the sound of her mind, again, is part of the expressive stagecraft. The revolver shot is heard and Blanche seems relieved, almost as if the trauma is over. It always stops after that. So there's this sense here, I think, as the polka music then dies out again. It's a way of including the audience in her madness. The content and the motivations for her mental degeneration are transparently communicated with the audience through this stagecraft. And so she, again, thinks that she's overcome this trauma at this moment in time. I'll go see if I can find the way of to cross it into the closet, pretending to search for the bottle. So she's, again, concealing the truth in her own room. She's acting again at this moment in time. It's important that this is a scene where all of that final pretense is completely destroyed. Further down, she says, I can't hear what you're saying, and you talk so little that when you do say something, I don't want to miss a single syllable of it. What I'm looking around here for, oh yes, liquor. We've had so much excitement around this evening, I'm boxed out of my mind. So yes, this kind of directionless thinking at this moment in time, and this moment where she's kind of sadly fulfilling the image of Stanley's understanding of her, and reveals that her stories are constructed. We've had so much excitement around her this evening, I'm boxed out of my mind. She talks here about her fabrications, and we're seeing here as the audience that there is a huge discrepancy between what she's telling Mitch and what actually happened. She pretends suddenly to find the bottle as well, so she's acting here, but in the end ends up fulfilling this stereotype of alcoholism and drunkenness. A little further down, if you don't know it must belong to Stan, take your foot off the bed, it has a light cover on it. Here at these moments in time, he's expressing his loyalty to Stanley, and then Blanche is trying to protect this sort of decorative instinct that I think shows her aesthetic commitments, and actually the shrouding of what's underneath, and the shrouding of reality, which we later on see Mitch confronting as he rips the paper lantern off the light. In this line, there's this sort of self-occupied pretense in her lines, where she said, you saw it before I came, well look at it now, this room is almost dainty, I want to keep it that way, I wonder if this stuff ought to be mixed with something, it's sweet, so sweet, it's terribly, terribly sweet, well it's liqueur, I believe. Well, that's what it is, it's a liqueur. So there's this, protection of her supposed decorative talent, and also this feigned sense of her not really ever having any familiarity with alcohol, which of course Mitch knows to be untrue, because he can probably tell at this moment in time that she's slightly drunk, because she's been drinking heavily. I told you already, I don't want none of his liquor, and I mean it, you ought to lay off his liquor. He says you've been lapping it all summer like a wild cat. So here, this sort of animalistic cliche that he uses to represent Blanche, I think, again, exposes the universality of these impulsive behaviours that we see in the play, and their destructive potential. That supposedly, she sees herself as wildly different from Stanley, but actually engages in one of his similar vices. What a fantastic statement she is. Fantastic of him to say it, fantastic of you to repeat it. I won't descend to the level of such cheap accusations to answer them even. Ha! So here, Mitch's response, is unable or disinclined to connect with her in order to overcome class or conflict. She uses her sort of flighty, expressive language here, and Mitch just bluntly refuses, I think, to even either attempt to understand or show any kind of inclination or willingness to think along the same lines as her, or even to hide his sense of class inferiority. Blanche understands that there's something untoward about Mitch's behaviour. She says, I see something in your eyes. And I think there's this sense here of her being in touch with the powerful forces that are driving her towards her negative destiny. That she sees this hostile intent in Mitch, and obviously it is this potential in him to be violent and threatening, and actually threatening this rape scene. Blanche says, I like it dark. The dark is comforting to me. I don't think I ever seen you in the light. And this light-dark motif occurs greatly here. And there's this, the sense of the light of reality being a sense of honesty. And it's so heavily in conflict with their intimacy in scene 6, where, most of it takes place in the dark. So the lighting here is the motif is preparing us for that unmasking of the truth and reality. And Mitch then talks about this. You never want to go out till after 6. It's always some place that's not lighted much. There is some obscure meaning in this, but I failed to catch it. What it means is I never had a real good look at you, Blanche. He hasn't seen the tangible reality. And Blanche fearfully says, light, which light and what for? So there's this immediate change here. This one with the paper thing on it, he turns the lantern. He tears the paper lantern off the light bulb and she utters a frightened grasp. So this is this physical exposure of the reality beneath the surface for Blanche. He rips this off. And I think her protection and the paper lantern functions, I think, perhaps as an idealized, aestheticized mask for reality, a mask or shroud for the blunt reality, the blunt light of reality. And his willingness to believe in it is all being signified through this destruction and is now ripping her open and making her vulnerable to obviously what happens in scene 10, which is where Stanley rapes her. So if we think of this in terms of comparatively with the birthday party, it's the opposite of Stanley's interrogation because it actually produces inauthenticity here. It goes about producing inauthenticity in a birthday party. Whereas here, this is about the confrontation of what is seen to be authentic. She hears, so I can take a look at you good and plain. Of course you don't really mean to be insulting. No, just realistic. I don't want realism. I tell you what I want, magic. And this is a really important quote in the overall aesthetic of the play. That here we have this central conflict between Blanche and Stanley, and Blanche really and everyone else, the vision of reality in concrete, tangible terms, and then Blanche's active refusal of this and her self-conscious awareness of her refusal of realism. She does not want this. And in many cases, this is the reverse of what happens to Stanley Weber in the birthday party. He has his realism stolen from him and destroyed by other people who fill him and destroy him with inauthenticity. She said, I try to give that to people. I misrepresent things to them. I don't tell the truth. I tell what ought to be the truth. And if that is sinful, then let me be damned for it. Don't turn the light on. So this is the most authentic articulation. It's ironic that her most authentic articulation from her character is one of her faith in the need for dissemblance, the need to commit to a deluding representation of reality in order to allow ourselves to get ourselves through the day, to carry on in life. What should be the truth, this sense of idealism that motivates these lives. So she said, this shows us, I think, a discomfort with prosaic reality through the lens of moral idealism, which is completely comparable to the sense of distance in Pinter's plays. We have this sense of distance between characters and from characters with themselves, that here I think Blanche is actually identifying the need for, the need to alter reality and to distance ourselves from its concrete features in order to survive, as a survival mechanism. Mitch crosses to the switch, he turns the light on and stares at her, she cries out and covers her face. So this again, is the way Mitch handles the light is this aggressive domination of the physical space in the theatre. And here, he then aggressively confronts her with the truth. He's slow and bitter. I don't mind you being older than what I thought, but all the rest of it, God, that pitch about your ideals being so old-fashioned and all the malarkey that you've dished out all summer. Well, I knew you weren't 16 anymore, but I was fool enough to believe you were straight. So there's this huge sense of disappointment in Mitch from the stories that he's heard from Stanley. And Blanche probes him about his sources. And Mitch in the end says 3 people, Keith Faber, Stanley and Shaw, swore to them. And Blanche says, rubber-dub-dub, 3 men in the tub, and such a filthy tub. And I think this is here representative of perhaps the beginning of her mental degeneration, that she doesn't actually bother to respond logically to these accusations and just simply criticises them through this infantilized little kind of child rhyme. And then they're talking about the Flamingo. Didn't you stay at a hotel called the Flamingo? Flamingo, no, Tarantula was the name of it. I stayed at a hotel called the Tarantula Arms. And there's something ironic about this because it reveals, I think, that kind of predatory instinct that I think she seems to be on some level aware that they're accusing her of. But actually, in terms of her behaviour with younger people, there is something kind of sexually sinister and predatory about it. Yes, a big spider, that's where I brought my victim. She pours herself another drink, so she now is crumbling and internalizing the way other people have seen her. So this section here shows us, I think, the variety of the forces and registers that she uses, and I think it shows us, I think, a lack of personal integrity. She says, "Yes, I had many intimacies with strangers. After the death of Alan, intimacies with strangers was all I seemed to be able to fill my heart with. I think it was just panic that drove me from one to another, hunting for some protection here and there in the most unlikely places, even at least in a 17-year-old boy. But somebody wrote to the superintendent, like, this woman is morally unfit for her position." So we have this kind of slightly distant, passive voice at certain moments in time in this description, I think, to distance herself from the reality of the pain. And there also the quotation of the superintendent's letter that obviously ended up getting her fired from her teaching job. You know, that the linguistic mixture there, I think, reminds us of Goldberg, and also reminds us then of the lack of personal integrity, the lack of reality at the core of this sense of identity. She throws back her head with convulsive, sobbing laughter. So she, here shows a torn internal conflict, that she's absolutely abject in terms of her despair, but at the same time is in this hysterical fit of laughter. And she repeats the statement, gasps and drinks. In these final lines, I think there's this linguistic reminiscence of Goldberg's reassurance and and Goldberg and McCann's sale of sort of conformity to standard. So her language here shows us, I think, this. Yes, I suppose, unfit somehow anyway, so I came here. There was nowhere else I could go. I was played out. You know what played out is? My youth was suddenly gone up the water spout, and I met you. You said you needed somebody. Well, I needed somebody too. So this evasive language, I think, shows us this loss of an articulate individuality. And then she goes on here, it says, "I thank God for you because you seem to be gentle, a cleft in the rock of the world that I could hide in." And this is one of those moments where her language appears to be degenerating, and then suddenly we have this, I think, wonderful kind of poetic image here for, this metaphor for the way that Mitch has functioned for her, and that the beauty and articulacy of that particular image, I think, immediately switches our sympathies on its head at this moment in time.